In this session, we're going to learn how data protection is not just about backup and recovery. Whilst backup and recovery is important for data protection, of course, the definition of data protection is much broader because you have to consider things like data security, you have to consider endpoint security, you have to consider user access, and all of those things are important. Data protection has got to a point where the boardroom is concerned about reputational damage and fines as a consequence of breaches of data protection regulations. GDPR really sort of set the scene for this, and now we're seeing it in other data protection regulations around the world. There are heavy fines, so we're talking about 4% of global annual turnover, or 20 million euros, whichever is the highest amount. So that's a significant fine. Although we haven't seen fines of that order of magnitude yet, we have seen many headlines from very well-known companies that have suffered data breaches because they didn't regulate their environment properly. And so this is making companies very nervous and wondering what they need to do to make sure that they're not the next headline. Data protection, when we think of data protection in most companies, and you speak to a lot of companies, it used to be a case that they would consider data protection to mean backup and recovery, which is fair enough. You're protecting your data by backing it up and you're storing it somewhere so that if something should happen to your application or your database, then you can recover from your backup. However, when we speak to companies today, in fact, we recently did a survey which really validated that point. Data protection now goes beyond just backup and recovery. It has to do with data privacy to reduce the risk of non-compliance. Yes, it still has to do with backup and recovery, but backups need to be encrypted to make sure the data in the backup can't be gotten at. And then finally, securing the endpoints, if you like, the devices, the users, and the applications against breaches as well. So it's not just protecting the backups anymore, it's to do with ensuring that users are protected, endpoints are protected, applications are protected, and also making sure you're compliant with data protection regulations. That's a much broader definition than used to be the case. So that's a tricky balance to get. And again, I come back to understanding your business operation better than you do at the moment. If you think about it today, things move so fast. A lot of organizations have not been able to keep pace with that amount of change, and particularly with the acceleration of working from home, it's very difficult to ensure that people work from home have the right level of access, and you don't get inadvertent breaches, if you like, of personal information. And in fact, some surveys recently confirmed the fact that for many organizations, data breaches of security are more likely to be internal than external. So, we hear about distributed denial of service and other types of attacks on the system from external bad actors, but actually, because of some of the reasons I mentioned, a lot of breaches happen internally. And it's because of, not as thorough understanding of your enterprise architecture as you really need. So I think in order to ensure that you empower the right people in the company with the appropriate levels of entitlement and ensure that you understand where all their devices are, you have to build this sort of model, if you like, this map of exactly where your data is in your enterprise. We call it data intelligence. So you have intelligence about all of your data on which then you can then start applying your data protection processes. In data protection, Quest has a number of different solutions that enable you to establish the protection of your endpoints, users, and applications. So we have rapid recovery, which is backup and recovery. We talked about that as still an important sort of thread, if you will, in data protection. We have our case solutions, which are all to do with securing users, privilege management, desktop management, endpoint management. And we have Toad and Apex SQL products, which identify and secure personal information in Oracle and SQL Server databases, two of the largest vendors in the world. More companies have those two platforms than pretty much anything else. And then we have products like NetVault, which is cloud recovery software. So again, if you need to recover data from the cloud, NetVault can do that. And then CoreStore, which is software-defined storage in the cloud. And that enables as well data replication. So data replication is another aspect of data protection when replicating data in real time to somewhere else for safety, so that if something goes wrong, you don't have a single point of failure. Having a single point of failure is really bad in an organization where the data is critical, because if you lose that data, you absolutely don't have any way to get it back and maintain business continuity. So backup and recovery is fine, but it still takes you a while to recover that data should you lose it. By having data replicated to another source, you instantly have a mirror of that data should you lose it, and therefore you don't have a single point of failure. In this series, we talked about multiple aspects of what we call in Quest data empowerment, and we broke it down into 3 key areas, starting off with data governance. Data governance is going to create the foundational understanding of your business infrastructure in order that you can start figuring out where your data is and who needs access to it. We then moved on to data operations, which is ensuring that the infrastructure on which your data sits is performing optimum performance, and you can automate as many processes as possible. And then we went on to talk about data protection, which goes above and beyond just purely backup and recovery. It also talks about data privacy and other important aspects of protecting your data. So thank you very much for listening. My colleagues at Quest and myself, thank you for joining this masterclass series, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you.